And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, to start off, it's all about the big tech companies that we've been talking for past few weeks or several months. And in this case, it's not just one company that is in hot waters in a sense. It's two companies that they are trading words of unpleasantly, so to speak. So in this case, we're talking about Apple and Facebook here, where they're trading, war of words in terms of who's better at, you know, using their customers' data, data collection or data privacy, who are considered disregarding the user's privacy in a sense. So let's take a look at what's being mentioned here. So it's Apple versus Facebook, as mentioned. Who is better at exploiting their user more? Is it Apple or is it Facebook? Now, in this article, according to Business Insider, Apple is stating that, well, they're not the one who's, not covering, hoovering up details in terms of selling their information to third-party companies, right? And obviously, Facebook does that in order to generate millions or even billions of dollars to gain profit, and that's how Facebook makes money, right? Out of their the many advertisers who uses the platform to sell products and services to the users. Now, Apple is also stating that not only do they allow the grouping of users into smaller segments, they use detailed data about online browsing activity to targets. Now, obviously, every time you use their platform, in this case Facebook, or whether it's Instagram, every time you look up a particular news feed or browsing a particular information or anything related, they keep track of it and they sell that information so that they can, let's say if you're interested in nature, they could, in essence, contact advertisers, who wants to sell a product or service, or even, if you want to travel abroad, right? You know, whether that's considered illegal or not, or unethical or not, well, that's debatable. Another is that the Apple is stating that they collect as much data as possible across both first and third party products to develop and monetize details profiles of their users. Now, obviously they don't explicitly tell you, but they do, ask for your consent, whether when you sign up for Facebook, that whether you agree to their policies, that in this case, they use they use your information, and they would be able to do whatever they want, whether whenever you post pictures or anything, any videos that, obviously it's for public consumption. Whether that's ethical or not, that's a different matter altogether. Now, on the other hand, uh, Facebook is also, hitting back in terms of accusing Apple for abusing its dominance to benefit itself. And it stated that Apple has expanded its business into advertising, and through its upcoming, release of iOS 14, changes is trying to move the free internet. Meaning, what's going to happen here, that instead of getting free applications here or services, this is where Apple can generate millions or even billions by making it a either subscription based, or you have to pay for it already. It's not free anymore. Now, whether that's unethical, obviously it's a business, right? So they should be allowed to, whatever they want, unless you can find an alternative to iOS. And Facebook is also stating that they're using their dominant market position to self-preference their own data collection, while making it nearly impossible for competitors to use the same data. Now, that can be said the same for Facebook, but obviously, Apple is known for their products like iPhone, tablets, laptops, MacBooks, and so forth, right? Now, investing more into more software related from the App Store, Music Store, and now venturing into, in essence, competing with the platform that they've already created. So meaning all of those businesses that have uh, benefited from the platform is now in jeopardy with the case of, that's why Epic Games is suing Apple for their unfair practices and so forth. And also, obviously, another issue that's being claimed by Apple, not Apple, but Facebook, is the transformation of Apple's business away from innovative hardware products to data-driven software and media. Now, obviously, with technology, obviously taking advantage of users' information is detrimental to a business, business profitability. Obviously, with the pandemic that's going on, this is what a business footprint, or I'm sorry, a digital footprint in the internet or using technological devices. In this case, using the internet, having devices expedite, the growth of any businesses. Now, whether that's considered, illegal or not, fair or unfair, even big companies such as Apple and Facebook are, encroaching in one another's realm, so to speak, right? Apple wants to control who uses their platform in the App Store. Facebook wants to gain an entry or foothold in their market as well, but to each his own, right? It's a never-ending saga. Anyway, continuing with Apple. Speaking of Apple, right? I think we just discussed this about, I think last week or a few weeks back, regarding Apple's issue when they were embroiled in the issue of, which is Epic, as well as Spotify and other big, tech companies, regarding their uh, considered exorbitant asking fee for every time that you purchase or use their platform. You're supposed to pay a 30% flat fee. Now, whether that's considered, you know, asking too much, but the issue is, it was brought up that, it's not fair across all boards, right? There was an article regarding that Amazon was able to get a better rate, half of that, half the 30% that they're asking for, and it's an ongoing battle right now. But guess what? Apple is doing something to sort of quell those issues, in a sense, wherein they are trying to cut the App Store fee by as much as 50%. So from 30%, it's now 15%. But there's a slight caveat. It only applies to a small segment of those developers. In this case, the small developers. So what constitute a, if if the cut fee is applicable to your business. So let's take a closer look. It says 15%. Yeah, so it stated it's 15%. Now, who can apply for this one? So this only applies to developers whose apps generated less than $1 million. Okay, so if your businesses generate more than $1 million, you qualify for paying the full 30%. Okay, now obviously this is big deal, especially if you're a startup business, you're trying to capture a market. Giving you a leg up by Apple is a big plus. And obviously they're trying to, quell those rumors of Apple's anti-competitive behaviors. Now, whether that's true or not, it's for the government to decide. But according to one of their, tech I would say competitors, technically you could say Spotify as a competitor already, that they're stating that, Apple's anti-competitive behavior threatens all developers in the iOS platform. And the latest move is just a, arbitrary and capricious, in a sense, because obviously based on the data provided here, that the majority of businesses that do use or benefit from using the App Store is way significantly bigger, right? Meaning, even if they were to, give small developers a 50% reduction of the fee, it only represents a small fraction. And that's why, Spotify and other companies are banding together, filing an antitrust complaint regarding the Apple way back in March 2019 for the anti-competitive and Apple's to inflate Spotify's prices while simultaneously launching a competitive service which is Apple Music. And what Spotify is stating also that we hope that regulators will ignore Apple's window dressing and act with urgency to protect consumers' choice as well as ensure fair competition and create a level playing field for all. Now, obviously, Apple is trying to make inroads in other industries as well, so it's not just in music, in Spotify competing with music, as well as competing with video streaming with the likes of Amazon Prime as well as Netflix and so forth. So obviously, they're making key steps slowly but surely. But obviously, they want to diversify their business, which is the right of Apple, right? That's what big businesses do. You start from one core business and try to expand. Now, expanding to a gargantuan point, is that beneficial for the market, for the consumer? We have to wait and see. Actually, another company who is up in arms with regarding the issue here is Match Group company, which has a dating app conglomerate known for Tinder, if you're familiar, stating that what more evidence does evidence of Apple's anti-competitive and monopolistic behavior does anyone need? Obviously, they're stating that if you manage to grow your revenue over 1 million, then they double their cut automatically, which is making it harder for startup, companies or developers to grow their business. Now, it's kind of two sides to every coin, right? Now, at least Apple's doing something, but is it enough? Obviously, for those you know, big businesses like Apple or sorry, Apple, like Spotify or even Epic Games, it's big business. They're generating millions and billions of dollars from there. And what's ironic here, according to the statistics provided by the New York Times, that although the commission cut will affect 98% of the apps in the App Store, which is, might seem a big percentage, a majority, but all of those apps only account for 5% of their revenue. So meaning the 2% that, that will not be affected, meaning they have to pay the full 30%, generates them the 95% of their revenue, right? And obviously, according to Tim Sweeney of Epic, is stating that obviously all major apps are built by larger companies. So obviously, 95% of transactions are still undergoing Apple's 30% fee, which is, that's why they're willing to help the small developers if you just reach a minimal threshold. And then if you exceed that, which is the majority of big businesses who are successful using the platform, have to pay the full 30. Now, whether that's fair or not, it's for the court to decide. And obviously, one of being stated here, whether that's true or not, that Apple is doing this so that the complaints will be reduced to the point where they can get away with the scheme perpetually. So at the end of the day, it's up for the customers, for the users, for the companies, for the government to decide, is Apple going too far, or will they be allowed? Will it be perpetuating like the article is stating here? Only time can tell, right? But it's one story from another. So another, continuing with Apple. So it's the never-ending saga that is uh, Apple here. So they've been in hot waters for some time. So we've been just discussing regarding their war of words with different companies. Here we have Apple. We have Facebook. Then they had the issue of charging too much. Then they have the issue that's called BatteryGate, where it involves Apple was to pay a massive, I won't consider it a massive fee, because 113 million is chump change for the big company here, after being proven that it uses battery health to slow down older versions of your iPhone. So meaning with degrading batteries known as BatteryGate. So this was an Apple tactic that was initially discovered by internet investigators which they tried to prove after noticing iPhones slowing down drastically. Obviously, you may have noticed that, in previous years, that you're an Apple user, that every time you update your phone, obviously from Apple, there was a sudden change. Slowly but surely, you would notice that the usage of your phone would drastically impact the battery in terms of lasting a day, came less than a day, half a day, or even worse. Now, it's one thing to consider that maybe it's time to purchase a new one or upgrade a new phone. It's another when the company itself who's trying to sell your phone is finding a way, or doing something about it to encourage you to fast track in terms of buying you for you to buy a new phone. And obviously this puts a questionable light whether the company has compromised its integrity among its customers, particular the older iPhone users, right? And let's see. There you go. Now, obviously, using iPhone, is a tremendous thing. It used to be, Nokia was the number one market in terms of mobile phones, right? And with the invention of touchscreen for iPhones, they have surpassed Samsung and even Nokia in the marketplace. Now, obviously, with better technology, more reliability, you'd expect that when you buy a new smartphone, it would last you several years, not just a yearly thing that you replace right away. And is it being too greedy that you consider that if customers are not replacing their phone fast enough to generate more revenue for your business, you try to find a way to manipulate the interface, in this case the battery life, so that it would deteriorate faster, which in turn would you know encourage customers to, maybe it's time for me to replace my phone, right, and buy a new one, a more expensive one at that, right? And I don't think it's a win-win situation here for Apple, because you're losing customers here left and right if that's the case here. Now, according to the article, yeah, they were asked to pay a sum of 113 million. Now, is 113 million a significant amount of money that's going to hurt the business? Will they rectify their bad practices? The fact that they did choose to decide to, go this path, it didn't happen by accident. It was a strategy. It was a plan coming from the top that it was disseminated to the entire organization, right? And if you're a customer here, it gets frustrating if you think about it. You're willing to spend, you're loyal, brand loyal to their brand, and then this is what the experience that you're getting. And according to the article, as mentioned, according to its past statement, that it did not or admit or mention anything about the battery health problems. Obviously, Apple was initially speculated by iPhone users as a means to urge customers to upgrade to a newer phone in this case. And 34 American states joined together or band hands to investigate the problem, which is iPhone, which that stands for older phone versions of poor battery quality. And surprise, surprise, they were proven to be true. So in this case, Apple has agreed to pay the settlement, but here's the funny thing: it does not admit to any of the violations or crime that the company had done. So thinking that you know they're just penalized, but they don't admit to any wrongdoing, right? But at the end of the day, based on what the situation has happened, it just goes to show that Apple is now admitting to anything thrown on them. However, whether they accept it or not, be responsible enough, you know paying a sum of 100 million is chump change, rather than losing millions or even billions of dollars of revenue with this said practices. And this wasn't the only time that happened. So in the state of Arizona, they get a settlement of 5 million. I think 5 million is a small amount. And then another settlement that occurred is the 500 million that they had to pay last March. Now, obviously, Apple is apologizing for the problem, saying that the company has let down its customers in the light of recent problems. Well, don't do unethical practices so that you can generate more, you can profit from your customers. Your customers are loyal to begin with. They will buy your products if you provide them a compelling reason as to why they should buy your products, and not give a reason not to choose your product and go to your competitors, right? We'll wait and see how this pans out, right? Anyway, so continuing. So again, so we were talking for successive articles regarding uh, Apple. Now we'll shift back to Facebook. Now it's not just Apple in hot waters. It's also Facebook who's also in hot waters, in particular in Vietnam, where Vietnam has threatened to shut down Facebook in their country. So if the social media giant refuses to bow down to the government pressure and censor more political content in its platform. Now, for those who are not familiar, Vietnam is a communist country, so obviously the government wants to control what information goes in and out of their country and how it's disseminated through their uh, citizens. And obviously, tightening control means regulating how the social media giant, which is Facebook, being integrated in the market here. So, there you go. So Vietnam's ruling Communist Party retains tight control on the social media giant in Vietnam. Now, it has already happened that Facebook's local servers in Vietnam were taken off early this year until it complied with the government's demand. Now, obviously, any government or sorry, every businesses that's doing business in any government has to comply with local government there. Otherwise, they cannot do business there. And uh, why do you think Facebook is so interested in their market? Well, guess what? It generates them a substantial revenue, as much as $1 billion. So you don't just turn away from a 1 billion revenue, right? And obviously, according to the article from Reuters, that the company has compiled with the government's request way back in April to increase censorship of anti-state posts for some 60 million Vietnamese users. So obviously, that's a lot of people, glued to their smartphones or to their social media app, and that's why they can generate as much as $1 billion there. And the company was asked to step up its restriction way back in August, on which Facebook refused. Now, obviously, it's a chicken and a mouse thing. If they don't follow the government's wishes, they might not be able to operate and they might miss out on the revenue. But it just goes to show that companies can still fight back in their own ways, and if they have the will to, what do you call this? If they have the will, you know, like Amnesty International is stating that the fact has not yet been banned in Vietnam, showed that the company can do more to resist. But obviously, a company can only resist up to a certain point, because if they were to suddenly shut down, meaning the market which is in Vietnam is totally closed off, then the money that which is a cash cow for them, will hurt their bottom line, which is they wanted to trade carefully, right? Rather than risk losing out the business. And obviously the government knows this, and they want to leverage that positioning, and tell Facebook, if you don't comply, you can't do business here. So Facebooks are obviously, you get to know what they're prioritizing. Is it profits or is it respecting human rights here? So at the end of the day, Mr. Zuckerberg, it just goes to show what your priorities here based on the actions here. So hopefully, they can find a compromise here. If Facebook can find a compromise here that would appease both the user as well as the government, then it would be a win-win situation here. Anyway, continuing. So next we have here is Amazon. Now, obviously, Amazon is always in hot waters for, for their monopolistic practices. But in this case, it's the workers who are having troubles with the company itself. So according to Amazon workers, they are going on strike with the upcoming Black Friday, which is obviously, if you're not familiar, Black Friday is a big deal in the United States. A lot of sales, a lot of revenues can be generated through this Black Friday holiday. So obviously, Amazon generates a lot of revenue here, so they need a lot of people to man their stations in their warehouses for deliveries and all of those stuffs. But obviously, the workers in Amazon have other things in mind. And what is the main problem here? So let's take a closer look here. So according to the trade union of Verdi, which is the trade union for workers for the German Amazon warehouse, and they're going to on a 3-day strike that will coincide with the Black Friday. Obviously, this is a big business for Amazon, and Verdi is demanding better pay and working conditions, and they're also organizing strikes at Amazon in Germany, the company's biggest market after the United States. And obviously, this is a big deal. And if Amazon's warehouse are shut down, it could hurt their revenues. And obviously, if you're Jeff Bezos, you're not too thrilled about this, right? And according to the Amazon spokesperson, said at the time that the company offered excellent salaries with benefits, as well as working conditions that's comparable with other important employers. Okay, going back. So we're talking about Amazon, workers are striking in Germany. So obviously, if the trade union is calling for changes in the company, then they need to be able to resolve the issues here. Now, whether it's true or not, but the main issue here is there's a problem. And I think both sides need to discuss this so that any problems or issues that that occurs can be rectified. And obviously, you know if this does persist, and it's going to be problematic for Amazon, not just the short term but also in the long run here. And according to Verdi, they're arguing this has strengthened the case for higher wages, adding workers were not sufficiently protected against the spread of the coronavirus. Now, this has been an issue also in the United States, wherein a former employee was fired because of not following protocols, but based on the employee's accounts, that he was stating that the warehouse was not safe in terms of the fear of we're in close proximity with other coworkers, that if they're not tested properly, screened properly, and then they're working in proximity to one another, that you might get infected, and which is one thing we don't want to happen here. And obviously, if there's a problem on either side, I mean, obviously the company has to listen to them, not just shoving them on the side and dealing with that, telling them that everything is hunky dory, that they're doing their job, or is they're doing what's the minimum requirement. And you need to satisfy at the very least what the requirement is. Now, is asking for a higher wage too much based on how you're generating millions and millions of billions of dollars during this pandemic? If it's not too much, and for better working environment, maybe it's not asking too much, right? I mean, little improvements will always go away in building the relationship between the company as well as the employees here. And guess what happened here? Here's a good example. Amazon bowed to the government pressure in France to postpone its local Black Friday. So the purpose here is to help local shopkeepers struggling with the nationwide lockdown now. Obviously, this cannot be implemented in other countries, but it just goes to show that, you know, businesses and governments can work together to find a way, find a middle ground that would benefit both companies, right? Obviously, competition is good. For Amazon, they will always be there in the long run. But for the small mom and pop stores, what will happen to them? And if you close them, it affects the local economy here as well. And it's a never-ending saga, but it is a problem. It is what it is, and hopefully, Amazon is willing to listen and address those issues of concerns from their workers. Next, we have here, it's still Amazon. We were just talking about them last week regarding, they're against counterfeiters, wherein they sued a influencer using different platforms in Facebook and as well as Instagram, and that promotes selling or buy for their customers to buy counterfeit products and using Amazon as their main platform. And Amazon is suing them, which is kind of ironic, which is one of their main issues, right? How can you allow third-party resellers who sells counterfeit products to use your platform? And you're just telling customers that you're doing everything you can once they're inside the platform. But I was recommending before that shouldn't they be vetted more properly, more stringent as to who can use their platform, so that you can minimize the proliferation of counterfeit products, which is, I think, beneficial for everyone's concerned. Customers will be more confident that the products they're buying is reliable and that's original, as well as companies, legit companies, will generate more revenue, which in turn will benefit Amazon. That's what I think. But anyway, so here Amazon is doing their part by partnering with the US government to stop the sale of counterfeit products, which is a good way of trying to mitigate or minimize the counterfeit issue which is in their platform. But is it enough? So let's take a closer look. So Amazon just mentioned or announced a joint operation with the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, or IPR Center. So they're focused on stopping counterfeit goods from entering the United States, which is fine, right? I think it's the prerogative of Amazon here to stop the proliferation of counterfeit product. But which goes back to my main point. I think the U.S. government can do so much in terms of the customs, that what is allowed, not allowed to go in the borders of the United States. But isn't it that Amazon should be the one controlling what is allowed to be sold in their platform? There must be a better way of vetting, which sellers are selling legit products versus those who are not selling counterfeit goods. Anyway, so looking at the article here, so Amazon is relying on the operations fulfilled action. So using its position or dominant position as both the distributor and the marketplace, which goes back to my point. If you're the one controlling who can distribute in your platform, should you be able to control who goes in? It's not just after you come in, that's when you dictate or try to look in if once they found out that they're selling counterfeit. Isn't it that before you start the business or selling your products, that you should find out, are they legit or illegal, right? And then it stops on their track. And whether they're registered, do they have to be registered business in the United States, so that they can be held liable, so that it would limit already who can sell on their platforms. At the very least, there should be a legitimate business that can be held accountable, in a sense, in the US Court of Government, something like that. And obviously, until that happens, the proliferation of counterfeit products will continue to grow. And what they're doing right now, as mentioned, using the IPR Center and Amazon have shared information previously even collaborating on a crackdown on fraud related to COVID-19. But again, that's after the fact, right? If you're going to control, the counterfeit issue is at the very beginning. I think that's the only way you can stop it from entering your market, and ensuring that the marketplace that you're providing is a safe haven for businesses to grow, right? I don't think you could say the same for, let's say, if you're Netflix, you're downloading illegal content and then you're sharing it to the market. You already know where you're getting your content, whether it's TV shows, movies, or music and so forth. That you already know where you're buying it from, whether it's from the parent company or from the distributor itself and so forth. Where it's see the chain of business connected here. It's legality and so forth. And as far as counterfeit is concerned, obviously Amazon is doing its part. Well, it's not enough, but they're doing that. They're already investigated and remove potentially fraudulent offenders, which is, oh, again, I go back to the after the fact. That's when they do those investigation. Could have avoided the investigation at the very beginning. Anyway, the partnership can only help them up to a certain point, but any help is better than no help at all. And the point here is to stop counterfeits at the border. And I think the government will do their part, right? But the question is, what is the role of Amazon here? So, question is, how can they regulate those bad actors or avoid, stop them from, popping up using your platform? And this is detrimental to your image, right? And then, lo and behold, your platform will be known for counterfeit products rather than just, selling, legitimate goods and services here. Now, obviously, their aggressive stance with the launch of counterfeit crimes unit is somewhat of a, after the fact, as I mentioned, that they could have done more at the beginning, not after the fact. But anyway, just to give you an idea, the counterfeit goods that are sold every year is worth almost $2 trillion. That's a big industry. That's why, if you're a betting man, if Amazon can control this, obviously they're generating millions and billions from this as well. So if they're really dead set on stopping counterfeit, I think they should really invest on this a lot, since they're already using technology to keep track of buyers' preferences, buyers' behavior, so that they could generate more revenue by selling you more products that you prefer, that you need, and also that you want. Why can't we do the same, or why can't they do the same for monitoring those illegal, illegitimate counterfeit products here? Anyway, so next we have here is EA. So for change here, so good news regarding EA here. So for some time, when you conjure up EA Sports, it's always about, gambling, loot boxes, microtransactions. You know, for some time, always there's always one of those times that they'll do something extraordinary. I won't say extraordinary, but totally different from what they're used to. And if you're familiar with their latest iteration of a Star Wars game, it's called Star Wars Squadron. So it's a multiplayer space combat simulation of sorts, and I think many users or gamers would be interested to play this game. And guess what? There's no microtransactions, which is a surprising feat if you think about it. That although the sports titles have microtransactions or loot boxes for their many games. So here's to give you a brief overview of what the game is. So Star Wars Squadrons is a combat flight simulation. So it's not the same as from Microsoft Flight Simulator. So this is a more fun simulation in terms of you're in the Star Wars world. So it's totally different than in previous flight simulation. It's a slow down pace, which replaces the mindless one button abilities with intricate systems. So it's a more the keyword here is more what do you call this? It's more immersive in a sense. So if you take a look here, let and see. There you go. An immersive game. So just looking at article here. So you can see here. So you're inside the cockpit of Star Wars ship. Now there are two types of uh, groups or factions. Sorry. So you have the Republic, which is supposed to be the good guys, versus the Galactic Empire, which is considered the bad guys. So you can choose from which side, and then there are 4 classes. So you get to play around different types of ships. So it's going to be interesting. So the fact that you can, play in the Star Wars universe is going to be tremendous, I think. And especially if you're a Star Wars fan, it's going to be an enjoyable experience here. So as mentioned, so there are different factions, the good guy and the bad guys, and there are different classes, so it gives you a different distinct feel in terms of uh, features of features of a spaceship, in terms of, is it faster, in terms of firepower, raw power. There's a trade-off in terms of using which one is more. If it's faster, is it less maneuverable? If it's powerful in terms of guns, is it less maneuverable, and so forth. So it gives you more options here. So it gives you a more compelling reason, a more immersive experience here. So let's take a look at the video here. I think, yeah, it's this one. Oops. There you go. So here, let's take a look at the different fighter plane here. Yeah, so you can see here. So, if you're an avid Star Wars fan, you're going to enjoy this one. And as you can clearly see, it's what fans are looking for. And guess what? There is no microtransactions, so it's going to be tremendous here. So if you're a lover of games, fighting simulation, so you can clearly see, you can see different types of ship, whether the X-Wing or the TIE Fighter that they're known for. You can, choose the different types of crafts at your disposal here. And it's going to be tremendous. And for a change, that there's not going to be any microtransaction, which is kind of surprising if you're, this is not what EA is known for. But again, it's better than, what they're used to in terms of providing a terrible experience. It's one thing to provide microtransaction, but the core gameplay is terrible, right? But at the very least, it makes a compelling reason to purchase this game. I think they had another game that they released that didn't have sort of microtransactions. The Fallen Jedi, I think. Yeah, I think I saw some gameplay of that. I haven't played it, but it was positively reviewed because there was no those stinking microtransactions, and you get to play from start to finish, right? And if they can do that, they won't be in this hot water that it is. Otherwise, they're tarnishing the image, which is Star Wars. I don't think Mr. Lucas or George Lucas is too happy about what's happening to his franchise here. Anyway, continuing. So let's go for some local news here. So obviously, with technology, with the what do you call this? With what's happening with the pandemic and everything, people's preferences are going to buying online rather than going to the actual stores. This has generated revenues for many businesses, especially for e-commerce and what such. On the other side, on the flip side, there's also a negative side, which what the Banco Central was mentioning, the suspicious transaction reports, or STRs, is up in the first 8 months of 2020. So this is fueled by the phishing schemes, increased payments related to child pornography. So obviously, people are stuck at home, using their computers or mobile phones. So what are you supposed to do? And obviously, with better technology, people who want to take advantage has to evolve as well. So they're finding ways, some loopholes in terms of how to game you, or in a sense, take advantage of your information, as well as scheme from you. So according to the Banco Central Anti-Money Laundering Council, or AMLC, Chairman Benjamin Jokno stated that the study found that a 57% increase on year to year for the first month of 2020. So obviously with, you know, people's with the lockdown that happened, you know, this has dramatically increased the usage of internet as a whole, right? And based on the data or the study that they did, that nearly almost 50% of STRs or suspicious transactions report were related to skimming and phishing with an estimated value of 2.7 million pesos. Pesos, let me see. Take a look here. Sorry, it's 2.7 billion pesos. That's right. So you can just imagine that, you know, illegal transactions have amounted to this much. So meaning it's a major problem that, you know, the government has to look into and evolve as a institution, because, you know, the proliferation of technology will only get better, and obviously bad elements will continue to take advantage of, you know, said loopholes, so that they can generate millions, or in this case billions of pesos here. Another statistic that was provided here: 30% of suspicious transactions, as mentioned, is related to sexual exploitation of children. So obviously, you know, I think government what has done in past is block off certain sites, but obviously again, with technology there are always ways to circumvent the process. And question is, what can the government do to stop those access? And again, the the exploitation of children is, you know, in the north of almost 90 million pesos here. So it's a big industry that, you know, the government needs to take into and find a way to stop and eliminate such bad actors. And another is transaction involving money mules or pass-through accounts. So it accounts for almost a little over 400 million pesos. That makes up 9% of the suspicious transactions during the period. And again, according to Mr. Jokno here, he underscores the need for covert persons to remain cautious, as money launderers and other bad elements, in this case criminals, may be abusing digital platforms, which have been largely adopted due to the pandemic. Obviously, you know, it's not just businesses who adapt and evolve. Obviously, on the flip side, the bad elements will evolve as well. So it's a matter of, you know, the government doing their part, protecting the citizens. Also, the citizens, that's us, we need to do our part to be more vigilant, more aware, and be more cautious in terms of where we transact, how we transact, and what we give out in terms of information and so forth. Otherwise, you know, we'll be in hot water. We'll be contributing to this industry, which we don't want to encourage and grow as well. And according to the study as well, they also found that there's been a rising trend of fraudster pretending to be affiliated with government units, which is, I think, is terrible, but it does happen. So what they do is solicit donations related to the pandemic. I don't think this is just an isolated incident, that they use other incidents as a case to get money from other people. And there were also incidents that was mentioned here, online shopping fraud schemes involving Bitcoin. So again, you have to be vigilant and be cautious in terms of how you deal with technology. If you're not familiar, you do your research, due diligence, you ask from people who are knowledgeable, so that you're not taken advantage. And obviously, if your email or your text that you've won something, you know, nothing in life is for free. So be suspicious on that alone, you know, unless it comes from your family, right? Anyway, and according to Mr. Jokno, he stated also that electronic money issuers, money service businesses, and other online fraud transfer services are advised to be vigilant. So again, it's not just the individuals, it's not just the government has to be vigilant, also other businesses that, you know, that relies on, you know, online transactions as their platform. Otherwise, people will be even more apprehensive of using their platform, and rather than go to the traditional way, which is we don't want to go back, right? If we want to remit money, we need to use their technology, but how do we safeguard that? So everyone has to do their part, right? And next, so again, so with the lockdown easing off, obviously other countries, our neighboring countries, I think Hong Kong and Singapore is trying to create a bubble in a sense, and I think Philippines is trying to create a travel bubble also with our neighboring Asian countries here. But again, the main issue here is it safe to travel abroad, right? I mean, they're planning to set up a travel bubble with different Asian countries, which is a noble notion, so that you can open businesses, help not just our local economy but other economies as well. But the risk of getting infected is still too high, and opening too soon, you're inviting more trouble than necessary. But according to the Department of Tourism, Undersecretary Bong Bengson, so let's take a look here. So they're stating that they have confirmed the groundwork for travel bubble program. However, he did not confirm when the said program will commence and which countries the Philippines will have travel corridors with. But hopefully this will take some time. Hopefully sometime by next year or mid next year, the very least, because there's still growing concerns of rising cases in other parts of the country. So we have to be cautious in this part. But I think what they're setting here is, what's the alternative of going abroad? Focus on the local domestic market, which is, I think, what's the what is common sense here. I think Japan has been doing this since they've reopened their they call this. They've encouraged their people to travel around the country so that they would help local businesses, hotels, travel destinations, and local businesses as well. And I think we can do the same here in our own backyard, meaning traveling to Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao's. There are a lot of travel destinations here in our country. I think people would enjoy traveling, seeing different places other than the four walls of your houses or your workplace here. Especially if you can go to the Luzon area, you can visit Lawag, Pangasinan, Baguio, many provinces. Then maybe go to Cebu or even go to Boracay, and then even travel as far down as Davao and visit other beautiful places here in our country here. And obviously, the country is going to bank on the domestic tourism sooner rather than later, obviously. And one of the locations as mentioned here is Siargao, which is the surfing capital, which is already open for tourists. Which I think, if you're a surfer, a wannabe surfer who hasn't learned yet, but I would be interested to visit those places and see a different scenery, different change of scenery. So it would be a sight for sore eyes for many of us. And obviously, all domestic destinations should be open for all Filipinos if it's safe to travel around the country already. Now, they're hoping, according to Mr. Bengzon, that the overtime will be able to increase the number of Filipinos moving around, which I think is the key here. When's the best time? As long as the government can ensure the viability of movement within the country as well as the safety of all citizens, I'm all for it. And I think it's high time now. Is it the right time? Is it this year or maybe early next year? We don't know, right? But according to him, he is confident that within the next few months, with the focus on domestic tourism, we'll be able to generate enough income to ride us over through this difficult time. Which I think is true, right? Helping local businesses grow is the key here. Even for a short critical period, that businesses would know that, let's say, in a month or two, or 3 months or 6 months, or whatever how long it is, that they would know at a certain time frame that businesses would resume, meaning people can travel again, which I think a lot of people are looking forward to, not just the businesses but also the travelers as well. And take note, according to the tourism, they're stating that the domestic tourism accounts for 80, 90, or 80 to 85% of tourism revenue as a whole. So obviously, investing in your local economy or local travelers is critical here. And finally, for our last story here, so some inspirational story here, despite the pandemic that's going on. We have first ever Filipino to win a sustainable award for creating something extraordinary, meaning converting rotting fruits and vegetables and turning them into electricity. Now, that's something you don't hear every day. So converting them into electricity, that's tremendous, right? Uh, is that on the same level as Elon Musk's electric vehicle? So let's take a closer look here. Where is it? There you go. So the first Filipino to win the sustainability award is none other than, oh, here you go, Harvey Eren Magi. Hope I'm pronouncing his name. So he's a 27-year-old electrical engineering from Papua Institute in university here in the Philippines. So he bagged the first ever global sustainability prize at the James Dyson Award for his invention. Now, for those who's not familiar, James Dyson is a popular inventor. Here. So what did he invent? Shows this one. So what did he what did he invent? So he calls this the Orius system, a new material derived from rotting fruits and vegetables that absorbs UV light from the sun and converts it to electricity. So you can just imagine how tremendous the invention that he did. Now, uh, and you can just imagine, the competition here. There were 1,800 entries worldwide. So 1,800 people were, joined this competition, and he was the winner. And he was handpicked by the inventor himself, James Dyson, for stating that it is an impressive in the way it makes sustainable use of waste crops, and in particularly impressed by how he resolved his resolve and determination. And again, according to Mr. Carvey, he mentioned as a farmer concerned about covering fertile food producing agricultural land in photovoltaic cells. So you could just imagine, thinking of a problem, how to provide a solution, and this is something that it's sustainable if they can mass produce it. Hopefully we can hold this technology in our country, and so that our country can benefit from these technologies, especially if you just need raw material for rotting fruits and vegetable as your raw ingredients to convert this into to an energy source or electricity would be tremendous, right? And obviously, his invention just goes to show that his technology is a way to create clean energy, on existing structures such as windows, cities, and even in the provincial area that doesn't have access to electricity. But with this technology, hopefully our government is listening and looking ways how to take advantage of this technology, and local businesses, you know investors are looking in how can we leverage this technology so that you know something to be proud of, right? A Filipino inventor, that's something to aspire of. And also, he stated that he wanted to create a better form of renewable energy that uses world's natural resources, which is obviously, fruits and vegetables are a plenty because it's a basic need of ours. It's close to people's lives, forging achievable paths and rallying towards a sustainable and regenerative future, which is tremendous. I applaud him. Congratulations, more power to him and more success. Anyway, so I think that concludes our discussion for today. So if you have any questions regarding topics discussed today, you can check in the link in the description below. So thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Take care.